This one's for the parents. Race drivers, wow, racing parents this time of the race drivers. This video is for you because I hear your pain. You're the entity or the part of the sport that gets the roughest deal because you've got your flesh and blood. I can't imagine what this is like, by the way. Your flesh and blood on the race circuit, your child or children, if you've got more than one in racing. You supply very often the resources, the cash, the opportunity. You balance, for this driver, this kid of yours to be in the sport, you balance their schooling. And if it's after school, you're the one that has to balance their life or help them deal with life while they're going for this racing career. You're the one who cares about them the most, unconditionally. You want this to work out. You want this to be into sport, into motorsport, especially because it teaches them life skills. So everything's coming from a good place from your behalf. However, it's the parents that get elbowed out. It's the parents that get treated the worst, that get ignored by their kid when they're at the racetrack. And the confrontations that you have when you're going home and you have to deal with picking the kid up after a bad race weekend and making sure they're motivated. You're the driver really behind this. So I think it's about time I did a show or an episode just dedicated to you. I'm doing a book on it right now. I'm writing a book called The Parent's Guide, working title, to raising a race driver. This is not for that, by the way. This was inspired, this show today, this episode, because my dad came over from Spain to visit us, and it made me reflect on the relationship, because I don't see him that often now. The relationship I had when I was racing, because he did not want me to race. My mum was there saying, yeah, go for it, live life as a dream. But my dad was like, no, school, work, how are you going to pay for stuff? We're not from that world. That's the way he viewed it. So I had to go out and prove it. I was like, no, this is my dream. I ain't got a clue about motorsport, but I'm going to go in. I'm going to become a driver. And I did, managed it, won a championship. Coaching was really where I'm good at, though. So I found that through the racing world, mental performance coaching. And if you don't know, that's what this show is about, teaching drivers the success skills of previous drivers and the ones I've coached and how they've gone from karting to F1. And it's the mental side mostly, but also how you are off track and work ethic. We cover all things that are related to the success of a driver. So I want to cover most things now that are related to the success of a driver's parent, of a racing mommy and daddy, because it's not easy, as I say, to be in that position. So if there's any drivers watching this, I just want to say, go easy on your parents. They're the ones that care the most. They're the ones that are making all this possible. They gave life to you in the first place. This chance that you have, they're the ones that provided it. So no matter how much they nag at you at the wrong time when you're at the track or are getting involved, just take a heartbeat now and then to realize my mom, my dad, either or, I love them to bits. They mean well. I won't be so hard on them. So I know it's the last person you want to listen to when you're trying to compete in a sport. I know what it's like when you're growing up. There's a big confrontation between parents and kids, obviously, when the kid wants to make their own mark. I understand all that. I was there. They're the people that you want to prove to the most, though, aren't they? Your parents. They're the ones you want to prove to, I can do it. There'll be one parent out of the two that you want to prove to the most. And you know who it is if you're watching this. If you're lucky enough to have parents in the first place. Now, I've seen all different kinds. Now, back to parents. I've seen all different kinds of parents in this sport over the last 20 odd years of coaching. You got the parents that are super involved because they used to run their child in a go-kart and then they go to cars and it's hard to let go. So they're really involved, coming from the right place again, but it's difficult to let go and trust the child is going to do the right thing and trust the staff around the child and the team. You've got the parents that are banned from race weekends or from the team because they're too loud and they're, again, too involved. You got the parents that don't really care and they let the kid do what they want to do. You got the successful parents that demands their kid to be good, even though they haven't got the talent. So you get that kind of interesting situation. You get drivers who haven't got parents, so they, again, making their own way. So there's all sorts of different relationships and situations that you see from all different classes, whether you're wealthy or not. It's amazing to see the spectrum of the relationship between the driver and their parent. But really it comes down to, if you're a parent now, it's like, right, I've got to try and give you some information now, some advice that covers the spectrum, that's kind of like allows everybody to take something from this video, no matter what angle you're coming in and how involved you are with your child's racing. So these are the tips that I want to share with you. And I'm going to run you through them. It seems like there's quite a few, but I've slimmed it down to seven things we're going to speak about, and they're just bits of advice that might be applicable to you or might not as a racing parent. The first tip, the first bit of advice I've got for you as a racing parent is to accept the child and parent clash. This is, and you probably experienced this yourself, when you're trying to make your way in life, doing something. You could be just playing a computer game and you want to do really well at it. If you're really trying to excel in a certain area, it's yours as a kid, right? It's your area, it's your dream. You want to do it. You want to prove that you're the boss, the man, the woman that can do this. And you want to prove it to your parents. So when the parent tries to help you, give you advice, you see it as nagging. You see it as being, I'm not good enough, so I need to take advice from you. When really you want to stand on your own 2 feet and prove that you can do it. So this is where you've got to accept, okay, remember when you were a kid and your parent was telling you how to do something, you probably do it the opposite way just to prove I'm not listening to you. This is in virtually every child and parent relationship I'm seeing. So when your kid comes in from a session, good or bad, and as a parent, you're in their ear, giving them advice, what you've seen, especially if you're not from the racing world, you're not a racer yourself as a parent previously, they don't want to listen. I tell you what, to be a good example, I, as a coach, can say the very same thing that a parent does to their kid, but they'll listen to it from me because I'm there as a coach. I'm not really seen as judging them as much. You're not there judging them, but that's the way they see it, remember. It's their perception that's really important here. So they take it, they say, okay, yeah, I've got a break later. But if the parent says you've got a break later for turn 1, they'll fight it. What do you know? You don't know anything. We're doing data. It's none of your business. And you get all this clash. And to be fair, it's disruptive to the race weekend because the kids always, it's like when you ask them, how was their day at school? Fine. About 20 things happened at school that were really interesting and important, ranging from they got a good result in a certain class, or they got bullied, something happened, they chatted up a girl or a guy and it worked for the first time if they're a bit older. So quite a lot did happen, but they sum it up for their parents on the ride home. It was fine. This is the clash. They don't want to have to explain it to you. They don't think they know how you're going to react to certain things as well. So they preempt it. So they don't bother telling you about it. This happens in the race truck as much as school, honestly, in the drive home from school. So I think as a parent, it's really good just to accept that. Okay, I can see that you're seeing my suggestions and what I'm observing and my advice is nagging. And maybe my timing's not quite right because I'm nagging, even though I'm not, at you as soon as you get out and your emotions are high, you just don't want to listen to it. So it is timing as a parent, and it's trying to be a coach without you making the kid feel like you're telling them what to do. Because again, they want to claim it as their area. They don't want you involved. So this is treading carefully here. There is no correct way of doing this one way, because each kid will wait, a week before they'll start to listen to you, or a day. So you can give your advice, but if I were you, I'd lean on the shoulders of people like me, like coaches and maybe their engineer, their mechanic, and say, you know what, I saw that he's braking too early. It's just an example for turn 1. Can you just check the data? I don't want to speak to my kid direct because they'll see me as being too intrusive. We can just check and see if that's true. And if it is, great. If it's not, don't worry about it. So kind of use channels to communicate to the kid so they don't think that you're coming in and you're overwhelming them and you're taking over. Just remember, it's their realm, their area. They want to be the expert. And the last thing they want is the parent coming in telling them what's wrong, what's right. And it's kind of like allowing your emotions to be part of it as well sometimes, because you're furious that they're not P1 or they're not as good as they could be. And that sometimes causes a clash between the emotions the kid's going through and yours. So just accept it. It's all you've got to do. Is tip number one, accept there's always going to be this clash of, I don't want to listen to mom, I don't want to listen to dad, I know better. So just remember that when you're giving some advice. Tip number two, advice number two, is don't do too much for them. Motorsport is the kind of sport that smacks you in the face consistently. It costs money. There's a lot weighing on it. Every decision is attached to some kind of consequence, whether it's a harmful one physically or financially, or just results based. You can harm your results or each decision on track. And it never stops sending you blows. It's terrible. You can have the fastest car, you can be on fire, but still you'll break down. You can do everything right, but you'll just make a mistake at one point, and then that's it. The whole race weekend is over. It's really difficult to have a solid weekend if you haven't got an advantage. And even when you have got an advantage, it doesn't allow you to have it sometimes. There's sponsorship problems, there's being selected by teams, there's all sorts of things and angles where this sport can kick you in the trousers and have you on your knees straight away. And it takes a certain kind of person to take that, the warrior mind, to thrive in such an environment. It's like business. Every single opportunity your competition can take to take you down, or life in general, or just luck has a say in it, it will. So you need to be thick-skinned. Now, if you're approaching, I'm never going to tell you how to bring up your kid, by the way, but if you're approaching the sport and trying to do too much for your kid, trying to put everybody in place, they've got a coach for everything in life, so they don't have to lift a finger, don't have to think about things themselves, like, oh, I should eat, I should drink, I should hydrate now, or I should take time to visualize. If they're not really doing things for themselves and they're not organized and they're just lazy kids, really, they're not going to make it. Again, when you think about my parents, my dad, he didn't want me to do it. Did not want me to do the sports. Thought I was crazy. We're not from that world. It's for other people, the wealthy guys. We don't do that. It made me more determined to do it. So I had to go out and find my own sponsorship. I had to go and buy my race car. I had to find someone to help me prepare it. Sometimes had to take the car myself, even though I was only 17, 18, 19, to the track, prepare it, race it, take it home. I had to do everything. Obviously, I got people to help me along the way, but it wasn't really much help from my family. And I'm so grateful they did that, because that made me step up. That made me prove to myself how much I want this. It made me handle and deal with the smacks in the face. That's the only, and then to become a coach, obviously, I could only become a coach because I walked this path. I took the hits. If people did everything with me, if I had my personal coach, my nutritionist, my just performance coach, mental coach, all these people around me doing everything for me, how could I teach others how to do it then? Impossible. So I want you to make sure that your kid proves how much they want it. They are self-motivated to go to the gym and train. They call up a sponsor now and then to get the sponsorship in. You've got to force them to do it. Otherwise, they don't go racing. That's the deal. Sorry, kid, if you want this, you're going to have to work for it. As a parent, again, I'm never going to tell you how to bring up your kid ever, because I don't know what it's like to have flesh and blood in motorsport, but you're the one that's got to make the kid do the work. If they don't, they're not going to have the thick skin that's required to succeed. It's just not possible. Please remember that. Straight into tip number 3, remember that they're at work when they're at the track. Now, it's easy to forget this, but when your kid's at the track, they are working. That's their job. Even if they're 7 years old, or they're 17 or 27, that's their job. Now, if I was to come into your work, or if they were to come into your work, or if your parent was to come to your workplace and constantly tell you what to do, how you should be working, how you should be talking to that person on the phone. I don't think you quite did very well in that meeting that you were just in. I think you should do this. And they're doing that every single time you do something at work. I don't think you should eat that right now, that cake with a coffee at lunchtime. And they're constantly there. Can you imagine how long you'd last before you told them to do one and get out of it? It's similar for race drivers. As a race driver, you go on track and people tear apart your performance. You got the engineer showing you the data, the video, you got your driver coach saying what they've seen and walking you through things of what to do. So you're constantly being analyzed all the time. Now, if the parent comes on top and starts to analyze and give their verdict as well, it just gets on top. And again, you get that clash and they're just like, no, I'm not interested. I haven't got time. We're sorting it, dad and mom. Leave us to it. We're in the debrief room for an hour. We've gone through everything. I want you to remember that as if you were at work as well, because at work, we don't get criticized. We probably have monthly or bi-monthly performance reviews with the boss, but not minute by minute. We're not torn apart all the time. So just take a step now and then. If you think, yeah, okay, I'm not being that hard on them, but I'm always on their case, telling them what to do. Eat this now, do that now. Are you doing this? Because it doesn't go in. It hurts the driver's performance when they see you as the person who's going to constantly be nagging all the time. All right. So even though you mean well, I have to do this as a coach. I have to pick the moment when you're going to tell them what to do, when you're going to give them some advice. Just keep that in mind. They're at work. So they don't need somebody cramping their style, if you like, and telling them what to do all the time. That's so harsh. I know it sounds so harsh, but again, as a coach, I have to remember this. You have to deliver it at the right time. So just remember, you at work, would you like somebody doing that to you? Would you like your boss, if you've got a boss, constantly criticizing you and saying how you can do things better on a minute-to-minute basis? You wouldn't. Tip number 4, the kid call-off period. Related to what we just said, after your kid has got off the track, the driver's got off the track and the result's not great, or they made a mistake or somebody took them out and their emotions are really high. They're peed off. They're throwing things around. They're swearing. Give them that time just to vent. Because when you watch them on track, you as a parent and as a coach, you see the kid do something, you see the driver do something, and you're furious. You know, how can you lock up? How can you find that traffic on the qualifying lap? How can you make a mistake like that? And you're angry, and you get back to the pit lane, and you're still fuming. You're going to vent to them. They're already angry as well. And again, it's a clash. It doesn't help anything. So give the kid time just to cool off, absorb what's happened, vent. You know, if they're being too aggressive, obviously calm them down. If they're making a fool of themselves and their teammates can see that they're mentally weak by the way they react, fine. Have a word with them after and say, right, we're not going to act like that anymore. But do give them that 5-10 minutes just to vent themselves and get things out, because they'll be disappointed. And when somebody's disappointed and just gone through public failure, they don't need somebody telling them how to act. Like, no, stop acting like that, pick up your chin. They're not ready for that advice. So let them have that time after a session when things haven't gone well to vent and release. They need it. Everybody needs it. You can't always be a robot, even though we'd love them to, when something goes wrong, to be in the right mindset to say, right, what we're going to do about it. That takes time. Some drivers take an hour. Some drivers take a week. Some drivers take an hour to get over a session. Some take 5 minutes. Learn how long your kid takes. Then you work at bringing that down, obviously, to 5 minutes to say, right, when are we going to get to resourceful mode? When are we going to go to solution mode? Find out when that is for your kid. Work on it if it needs to bring it down, but just let them have that time. You'll be angry, but by the time you get back to the pit lane, be centered. Let them vent. When they're ready, or when you think they should be ready, that's when we start to get to solution mode. So just give them a little bit of time to vent. Number 5, let the experts do their work. Now, it's difficult. If you see that your child is not performing very well, the setup doesn't look good, the engine's down, the pit stops are not good, or something like that, you know, the team are the experts. If you've selected them to run your child in a race season, you've got to hand over a lot of the responsibility to them and trust them. You hold them accountable by having like reports after the race, say, right, what was it the driver can do better? My kid can do better. What is it do you think the team can do better? And what have we got in place to make these areas better? As a parent, leave it at that. That's what the management can do as well. But management can go in just a bit deeper and start to kick ass within a team. So, right, My client is not happy. My client is paying your bills, Mr. Race Team owner. Let's sort this out. But as a parent, take a little bit of a step back. You can vent through the coach. You can tell the coach how pissed off you are to sort things out. You can vent through the manager if you've got one, but don't vent through the kid and don't vent through the team initially, because there becomes a divide then. If a team feels like they're constantly judged by the parents, they can ban you. I know it sounds crazy, but they can say, right, I think it's better for the work environment if you're not in the truck, or you stay away. It just doesn't help. And the kid gets embarrassed because you're shouting at the team in front of them, and it's not good when they want to be the boss again, remember. So always hold the team accountable for the things they do, like having a report and having a nice discussion the week following the race over the phone, like what can we do to improve, you know, my mechanic's not good enough, what we're going to do to either train them better or give them help or fire them. You do it that way rather than going into the team shouting, getting angry, because that doesn't help anything. The team will not like it if their client is like that. And I know it's not completely correct, because maybe you helped your child a lot in karting, you had a lot of say, but when it comes to cars, and even in karting really, the team have been doing their job most likely way before your child was even born. They've got this down. They know exactly what to do. They've seen all different kinds of drivers. They've got the experience. They know how to handle things. So it comes to a certain level where you've got to trust them. You appointed them to look after your child racer, your kid, that season. So you've got to let them do it. Same with the coach. You know, if somebody employs me, I take it on. I say, right, I've been coaching since the 90s. I've done all this work. I've seen pretty much every driver there is to know and situation there is to know. Don't worry, I've got this. But if the client then starts to tell me how to coach and how it should be done, and they're kind of bullying me in how I should coach the driver, it doesn't work. It's like, no, you don't understand. We've been doing this a long time. Trust. We're going to sit down. We're going to debrief. We're going to go through things, come up with a strategy. And if not, we're going to have some kind of training in place that will allow this driver to get better in that area. So you hold the coach accountable at the end. You know, how are we getting on? Give me a monthly report. But don't try and do the job of the experts that you've appointed. Let them, feed them with confidence and let them be at their best as well. So not just the kid, but the people around your child. You've got to kind of manage them, but let them do their thing. Unless they're crap at their job or they're just doing a bad job for too long, then just fire them. My sixth tip is to help the driver learn from every outing. I suggest, this is what a coach does, and this is what a parent can do even better because you're at home all the time with them. I suggest that you use every single outing as a learning experience. Every single race, every single qualifying, every single test is just your kid going there to take something from it. So if they get their ass kicked and they're a second off, it's like, right, we've got to learn something. There's one thing maybe in the driving that's causing the biggest chunk, like 6/10 of this 1 second of being off. Is it the mindset, or is it the driving? Is it the performance of the car or the team? And this is pretty much where you split things up. So to 4 things, right? Just so I don't get ahead of myself. If you see an outing, you see a race weekend, you're like, right, let's learn as much as we can from this, win or lose. The result is irrelevant right now. What can we learn from the car and team performance? That's area number 1. What was it strong? Where was it strong and where can it be better? Brilliant. Okay. The driving. Pros and cons of the driving. This is the second area, the technique. Is my child driving correctly or not? We'll find out. And what can we do to improve it if it needs improving? Thirdly, the mindset, the mental performance. Are they handling pressure well? Are they overdriving? Are they being too focused on lap time and not really on the process? That's where you've really got to help them stay on the process. Yes or no, pros and cons. Then the fourth area, which you can't really do much about, is the actions of others. Is sheer luck, is the steward's decisions. What can we learn from that, if anything? Maybe we can learn letting go of everything that's out of our control, but it's still an area we need to know. So remember, area number 1, team and car performance. Area number 2, driving. Area number 3, the mindset of the driver, pros and cons of each one. And then what are the things that are out of our control that maybe we can influence or just let go? This is how I do it, by the way, as a coach. These are the 4 areas that we debrief on after a race weekend or a test. What can we learn from each of these 4 areas? And if there's something really needed to be improved, what are we going to do to improve it? Are we going to speak to the team about taking the engine to the dyno? Are we going to learn car control a bit more, or driving in the wet because we sucked in the wet? Are we going to learn how to manage our emotions better? So we talk to the mental coach and see if there's techniques we can implement for the next time out. And what can we take from the stewards? Okay, the stewards seem to be, things out of our control. The stewards seem to be very sensitive to track limits. Don't do that. There's a crazy driver that you're going for the title with or against the championship with. Don't put yourself on the outside of them. Brilliant. Not our control, but we can influence it. So really help your driver when they're ready. Remember, they need the call-off period. Maybe it's like a few days after the race weekend or test, to sit down and just go through each area, or help them, or help the coach, make sure the coach is doing this or the team is doing this. We really need to know how they're performing in these 4 areas, what their strengths and weaknesses are, especially in the first 3 areas. And you take it from there. And that way you keep the driver focused on the process. So they're learning from every outing. So they're not really, okay, they're disgusted when they lose or make a mistake, but let's use that as fuel. Because when you lose, there's a reason. It's going to be in these areas, the 3 areas that you're in control of, okay? And if you win, great, but don't lose sight of, we must learn from this win. So stay emotionally controlled, no matter what the result, good or bad, whether you wanted that result or not. You're the one that has to take and extract from every single outing, every single lap if you can. As a parent, I really want you to bring that into the forefront and keep it there. Not, I'm going to be overjoyed and going to give you a present and love you more if you win, because that's conditional love. That's something that never helps anything. And it makes the driver stress when things are not going well and over congratulate themselves when they do something right. We want to keep it on a level, keep it focused on the process. What can we learn? As a parent, you're one of the most important people who can bring that home. And the 7th one, which is difficult, lead by example at home. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life or how to parent, but if you're preaching to your child about how to act, how to deal with things emotionally, how to eat, taking eating as an example, you must eat this and this to perform at your best, and so I can make sure you're a machine when you're at the track. Yet when you go home, you're eating burgers, you're on your 10th beer, and it happens quite often, and the kid sees that. They're going to see you as someone who is not walking their talk. This is going to be so hard because you've got to let your guard down at home. But if you're preaching something to your child of how to act, how to behave, but you're doing the opposite at home, you're not mastering your emotions, even though you're telling them to. This is something I have to do as a coach as well, obviously. I have to learn this stuff before I teach it. I had to go through walk their path before I can teach it, right? And as a parent, a lot of parents don't do that, but I see it as being a secret weapon. If you see your parent doing something and then they're teaching you to do the same, it's a lot easier to take on than if they're doing the opposite and just saying what you should do, what they would do if they could do it all over again. They want to see you echo and walk the talk. So just keep an eye on yourself at home. If I'm telling my kid to do something, you know what? I'm going to see it as a challenge and I'm going to do it. I'm going to drink more water. It could be something as simple as that, right? It's important. They're constantly taking and learning from your behavior. So just remember that a few times when you're at home. Right, so they're the 7 tips. I hope that 1 or 2 of these will help you on your way with your kid and how to handle them and how to just position yourself in their racing life, because it is difficult, as I say. And again, it's coming from love. I'm only saying this because I really want you to help your kid. And I know that it's a terrible world. Everyone takes advantage of the parents in motorsport, from the teams to people. They just see you as the person providing the driver and money sometimes, obviously a lot of the times, and get out. But there is a place for you. You're so important to your kids' success in this sport. You're pivotal. You're you're the people that's in their ear all the time, the most influential person in their life. So I want you to remember that, but just some tips here on coaching tips. These are the kind of tips that I would tell myself as a coach. So I'm not asking you to do anything different than I wouldn't. And I hope this helps in some way. So that's for the parents, not for the drivers as much. And thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.